United States of Europe, European State, European Federation, and Federal Europe are names used to refer to several similar hypothetical scenarios of the unification of Europe as a single sovereign federation of states, similar to the United States of America, both as projected by writers of speculative fiction and science fiction, and by political scientists, politicians, geographers, historians, and futurologists. At present, while the European Union is not officially a federation, various academic observers regard it as having the characteristics of a federal system. Specifically, the term United States of Europe Euro as a direct comparison with the United States of America Euro would imply that all the European states would be reduced to a status equivalent to that of a U.S. state, losing their national sovereignty in the process and becoming constituent parts of a European federation. History. Various versions of the concept have developed over the centuries, many of which are mutually incompatible. Such proposals include those from Bohemian King George of Podebready in 1464, Duke de Sully of France in the 17th century, and the plan of William Penn, the Quaker founder of Pennsylvania, for the establishment of a European Diet, Parliament or Estates. 19th century Felix Markham notes how during a conversation on St. Helena, Napoleon Bonaparte remarked, Europe thus divided into nationalities freely formed and free internally, peace between states would have become easier, the United States of Europe would become a possibility. United States of Europe was also the name of the concept presented by Wojciech Jastrz's unregistered trademark Boski in About Eternal Peace Between the Nations, published May 31, 1831. The project consisted of 77 articles. The envisioned United States of Europe was to be an international organization rather than a superstate. Giuseppe Mazzini was an early advocate of a United States of Europe, and regarded European unification as a logical continuation of the unification of Italy. He created the Young Europe movement. The term United States of Europe was used by Victor Hugo, including during a speech at the International Peace Congress held in Paris in 1849. Hugo favored the creation of a supreme, sovereign Senate, which will be to Europe what Parliament is to England, and said a day will come when all nations on our continent will form a European brotherhood. A day will come when we shall see the United States of America and the United States of Europe face to face, reaching out for each other across the seas. Hugo planted a tree in the grounds of his residence on the island of Guernsey. He was noted in saying that when this tree matured the United States of Europe would have come into being. This tree to this day is still growing in the gardens of Maison de Hauteville, St. Peter Port, Guernsey, Victor Hugo's residence during his exile from France. The Italian philosopher Carlo Cattaneo wrote, "The ocean is rough and whirling, and the currents go to two possible endings, the autocrat, or the United States of Europe." In 1867 Giuseppe Garibaldi and John Stuart Mill joined Victor Hugo at a Congress of the League for Peace and Freedom in Geneva. Here the anarchist Mikhail Bakhtin stated that in order to achieve the triumph of liberty, justice and peace in the international relations of Europe, and to render civil war impossible among the various peoples which make up the European family, only a single course lies open, to constitute the United States of Europe. The French National Assembly also called for a United States of Europe on March 1, 1871. 20th century Following the catastrophe of the First World War, some thinkers and visionaries again began to float the idea of a politically unified Europe. In 1923, the Austrian Count Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi founded the Pan-Europa movement and hosted the first Pan-European Congress, held in Vienna in 1926. The aim was for a Europe based on the principles of liberalism, Christianity and social responsibility. Before the Communist Revolution in Russia, Trotsky foresaw a Federated Republic of Europe, the United States of Europe, created by the proletariat. In 1929, Aristide Briand, French Prime Minister, gave a speech before the Assembly of the League of Nations in which he proposed the idea of a federation of European nations based on solidarity and in the pursuit of economic prosperity and political and social cooperation. Many eminent economists, among them John Maynard Keynes, supported this view. At the League's request, Britain presented a memorandum on the organisation of a system of European Federal Union in 1930. In 1931, French politician Émile de Hériot and British civil servant Arthur Salter both penned books titled The United States of Europe. During the World War II victories of Nazi Germany in 1940, Wilhelm II stated that the hand of God is creating a new world and working miracles. We are becoming the United States of Europe under German leadership, a united European continent. In 1941 the Italian anti-fascists Altiero Spinelli and Ernesto Rossi finished writing the Ventotene Manifesto, encouraging a federation of European states. The term United States of Europe was used by Winston Churchill in his speech delivered on September 19, 1946 at the University of Zurich, Switzerland. In this speech given after the end of the Second World War, Churchill concluded that we must build a kind of United States of Europe. In this way only will hundreds of millions of toilers be able to regain the simple joys and hopes which make life worth living. Before the Second World War, Churchill favored an isolationist attitude towards continental Europe. On February 15, 1930, Churchill commented in the American journal The Saturday Evening Post that a European Union was possible between continental states but without Britain's involvement. We see nothing but good and hope in a richer, freer, more contented European commonality. But we have our own dream and our own task. We are with Europe, but not of it. We are linked but not compromised. We are interested and associated but not absorbed. Churchill's was a more cautious approach to European integration than was the continental approach that was known as the Federalist Position. The Federalists advocated full integration with a constitution, while the Unionist United Europe movement advocated a consultative body, and the Federalists prevailed at the Congress of Europe. The primary accomplishment of the Congress of Europe was the European Court of Human Rights, which predates the European Union. Prospects for closer union. The member states of the European Union do have many common policies within the European Union and on behalf of the EU that are sometimes suggestive of a single state. It has a common executive, a single High Representative for the common foreign and security policy, a common European security and defence policy, a Supreme Court, a peacekeeping force, and an intergovernmental research organisation. The euro is often referred to as the single European currency, which has been officially adopted by 18 EU countries while 7 other member countries of the European Union have linked their currencies to the euro in ERM2. In addition, a number of European territories outside the EU have adopted the euro unofficially, such as Montenegro, the Republic of Kosovo and Andorra. The EU, however, does not have a single constitution, a single government, a single foreign policy set by that government, a single taxation system contributing to a single exchequer, or a single military. There is no such thing as a single European justice system, let alone a European prosecutor who could enforce European Union law in European trial courts independent of the courts of individual member states. There are no European trial judges who have sworn loyalty to Europe over loyalty to their home countries, and no European prisons. Without its own independent courts and prisons, the European Union's ability to curb corruption in member states is severely limited. Several pan-European institutions exist separate from the EU. The European Space Agency counts almost all the EU member nations in its membership, but it is independent of the EU and its membership includes nations that are not EU members, notably Switzerland and Norway. The European Court of Human Rights is also independent of the Union. It is an element of the Council of Europe which, like ESA, counts EU members and non-members alike in its membership. At present, the European Union is a free association of sovereign states designed to further their shared aims. Other than the vague aim of ever closer union in the Solemn Declaration on European Union, the Union has no current policy to create either a federation or a confederation. However, in the past, Jean Monnet, a person associated with the EU and its predecessor the European Economic Community, did make such proposals. A wide range of other terms are in use, to describe the possible future political structure of Europe as a whole, and/or the EU. Some of them, such as United Europe, are used often, and in such varied contexts, but they have no definite constitutional status. In the USA, the concept enters serious discussions of whether a unified Europe is feasible and what impact increased European unity would have on the United States of America's relative political and economic power. Glyn Morgan, a Harvard University associate professor of government and social studies, uses it unapologetically in the title of his book The Idea of a European Superstate, Public Justification and European Integration. While Morgan's text focuses on the security implications of a unified Europe, a number of other recent texts focus on the economic implications of such an entity. Important recent texts here include Tia Reid's The United States of Europe and Jeremy Rifkin's The European Dream. Neither the National Review nor the Chronicle of Higher Education doubt the appropriateness of the term in their reviews. European Federalist organizations Various Federalist organizations have been created over time supporting the idea of a federal Europe. These include the Union of European Federalists, the European Movement International and the European Federalist Party. Union of European Federalists. The Union of European Federalists is a European non-governmental organization, campaigning for a federal Europe. It consists of 20 constituent organizations and it has been active at the European, national and local levels for more than 50 years. A young branch called the Young European Federalists also exists in 30 countries of Europe. European Movement International. The European Movement International is a lobbying association that coordinates the efforts of associations and national councils with the goal of promoting European integration, and disseminating information about it. European Federalist Party. The European Federalist Party is the pro-European, pan-European and federalist political party which advocates further integration of the EU and the establishment of a federal Europe. Its aim is to gather all Europeans to promote European federalism and to participate in all elections all over Europe. It has national sections in 15 countries. Politicians Guy Verhofstadt. Following the negative referenda about the European Constitution in France and the Netherlands, the Belgian ex-Prime Minister Guy Verhofstadt released in November 2005 his book, written in Dutch, Verenigde Staten van Europa, in which he claims a euro based on the results of a Eurobarometer questionnaire that the average European citizen wants more Europe. He thinks a federal Europe should be created between those states that wish to have a federal Europe. In other words, a core federal Europe would exist within the current EU. He also states that these core states should federalize the following 5 policy areas: a European social economic policy, technology cooperation, a common justice and security policy, a common diplomacy and a European army. Following the ratification of the Treaty of Lisbon by all member states of the EU, the outline of a common diplomatic service, known as the External Action Service of the European Union, was set in place. On February 20, 2009, the European Parliament also voted in favour of the creation of Synchronized Armed Forces Europe as a first step towards forming a true European military force. This short book is a summary of the condition the EU idea consequent to the no votes on the European Constitution, in referendums held in 2005 in France and the Netherlands. In this book, the author enunciates his case forcefully for a stronger federal approach to the economic and political challenges the EU member states will face in the future. Verhofstadt's book was awarded the first Europe Book Prize, which is organized by the Association Esprit d'Europe and supported by former President of the European Commission Jacques Delors. The prize money was at €20,000. The prize was declared at the European Parliament in Brussels on December 5, 2007. Swedish crime fiction writer Henning Mankell was the president of the jury of European journalists for choosing the first recipient. Mankell said, "The jury was sensitive to the political courage showed by the current Prime Minister of Belgium. In a Europe which has a lot of self-doubt, which has a lot of questions about its own future, he offers a clear proposal for the future and gives reasons to believe in European construction." While receiving the award, Verhofstadt said, "When I wrote this book, I in fact meant it as a provocation against all those who didn't want the European Constitution. Fortunately, in the end a solution was found with a treaty that was approved." Viviane Reding, In 2012, Viviane Reding, the Luxembourgish vice president of the European Commission, called, in a speech in Passau, Germany, and in a series of articles and interviews, for the establishment of the United States of Europe as a way to strengthen the unity of Europe. Matteo Renzi, the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, said in 2014 that under his leadership Italy would use its 6-month-long presidency of the European Union to push for the establishment of a United States of Europe. Opposition equals, the European Union does not include every nation in Europe, and there is no consensus among the existing national governments towards becoming even a confederation. There is also significant internal opposition to the concept in many member states. Polls equals. According to Eurobarometer, 69% of citizens of the EU are in favour of direct elections of the President of the European Commission. 46% are supporting the creation of a united EU army. 2/3 of respondents think that the EU should make decisions on foreign policy. More than half of respondents think that the EU should also make decisions on defence. 44% of respondents support the future development of the European Union as a federation of nation-states, 35% are opposed. The Nordic countries were the most negative of a united Europe in this study. 73% of the Nordics opposed the idea. A large majority of the people for whom the EU conjures up a positive image support the further development of the EU into a federation of nation-states. Predictions. Future superpower equals. The United States of Europe is widely hypotheticized, fictionalized, or depicted as a superpower which is as or more powerful than the USA. Some people such as Tia Reid, Andrew Redding, and Mark Leonard, among others, believe that the power of the hypothetical United States of Europe will rival that of the USA in the 21st century. Leonard cites 7 factors: Europe's large population, Europe's large economy, Europe's low inflation rates, Europe's central location in the world, the unpopularity and perceived failure of American foreign policy in recent years, and certain European countries' highly developed social organization or quality of life. Some experts claim that Europe has developed a sphere of influence called the Eurosphere. A small power equals. Norwegian foreign policy scholar and commentator Arl Toge has argued that the power and reach of the European Union more closely resembles a small power. In his book The EU is a Small Power, he argues that the EU is a response to and function of Europe's unique historical experience, in that the EU contains the remnants of not one but 5 past European orders. Although the 1990s and early 2000s have shown that there is policy space for greater EU engagement in European security, the EU has been unable to meet these expectations. The author expresses particular concerns over the Union's security and defence dimension CSDP, where attempts at pooling resources and forming a political consensus have failed to generate the results expected. These trends, combined with shifts in global power patterns, are seen to have been accompanied by a shift in EU strategic thinking, whereby great power ambitions have been scaled down and replaced by a tendency towards hedging vis-à-vis the great powers. The author uses the case of the EUFOR intervention in Darfur and Chad to illustrate that the EU's effectiveness is hampered by a consensus Euro expectations gap, owing primarily to the lack of an effective decision-making mechanism. In his view, the sum of these developments is that the EU will not be a great power, and is taking the place of a small power in the emerging multipolar international order. Fiction. In the fictional universe of Eric Flint's best-selling alternate history 1632 series, a United States of Europe is formed out of the Confederation of Principalities of Europe, which was composed of several German political units of the 1630s. Science fiction has made particular use of the idea. Incompetence, a dystopian novel by Red Dwarf creator Rob Grant, is a murder mystery political thriller set in a federated Europe of the near future, where stupidity is a constitutionally protected right. References to a European alliance or European hegemony have also existed in episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. In the Spy High series of books for young adults, written by A.J. Butcher and set around the 2060s, a united Europe exists in the form of Europa, and Andrew Roberts's 1995 book The Aachen Memorandum details a United States of Europe formed from a fraudulent referendum entitled the Aachen Referendum. Since the 2000s, a number of computer strategy games set in the future have presented a unified European faction alongside other established military powers such as the US and Russia. These include Euroforce, a 2006 expansion pack to Battlefield 2, and Battlefield 2142. In Battlefield 2142, a united Europe is shown as one of the two great superpowers on Earth, the other being Asia, despite being mostly frozen in a new ice age. The disaster theme continues with Tom Clancy's End War, in which a nuclear war between Iran and Saudi Arabia, destroying the Middle Eastern oil supply, prompts the EU to integrate further as the European Federation in 2018. One game not to make bold claims of full integration is Shattered Union, set in a future civil war in the US, with the European Union portrayed as a peacekeeping force. The video game series Wipeout, on the other hand, makes a clear federal reference without a military element. One of the core themes that has appeared in every game is FISA. This acronym stands for Federal European Industrial Science and Research. In the video game series Mass Effect set in the 22nd century, the European Union is a sovereign state. See also: American Committee on United Europe, BRAN EU, Captain Euro, European Civil War, European Navigator, Eurocentrism, Euroscepticism, Federal Europe, Fourth Reich, History of the European Union, Institutions of the European Union, Multi-Speed Europe, New England Confederation, Pan-European Identity, Potential Superpower, Pro-Europeanism, World Government. References. External links: Political Speeches by Victor Hugo, My Revenge is Fraternity, where he used the term United States of Europe. Towards a United States of Europe, by Jar 1/4 Gen Habermas, at sinansight.com, Euro is Brita Euro EU flag and symbol site about the United States of Europe.